Clara Hayes stepped off the shuttle onto the cold metal floor of the Valari space station. The air smelled faintly of oil and metal, and the lights above cast long shadows on the walls. She adjusted her pack and glanced around. This station had been the center of Valari power for decades, and now she, a human diplomat, had been sent to meet with their leaders. From the moment she arrived, Clara could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on her. The Valari were tall, lean, and moved with precision. Their skin was pale gray, and their eyes reflected the dim lights like polished stone. Clara had studied their culture carefully. They valued strength and strategy, and they distrusted humans. Very few aliens trusted humans, and for good reason. Across the galaxy, humans had earned a reputation for unpredictability. Lyra Talon watched Clara from the shadows. She was a commander of the Valari Guard, responsible for the safety of the station and the council that ruled it. Her mind raced as she thought about the orders she had received. If the human proved dangerous, she was to eliminate her without hesitation. Lyra had trained for this moment her entire life. She had faced invaders, smugglers, and traitors, but never someone like Clara Hayes. Lyra could feel the pressure in her chest as she prepared herself. She had to be ready. Clara walked toward the council chambers, her steps calm and deliberate. Every move was measured, every glance purposeful. She was aware of Lyra watching her, but she did not show fear. Humans were often underestimated by other species, and Clara intended to use that to her advantage. She had been trained not only in diplomacy, but in observation and negotiation. Her task was difficult, but she was ready. As Clara entered the council chambers, the room seemed larger than it should have been. High ceilings stretched above her, and the walls were adorned with symbols she could not read. The council members were seated in a semicircle, their eyes fixed on her. Clara bowed slightly, a gesture of respect she hoped would be understood. "Welcome, human," said one of the council members, a tall Valari named Taran. His voice was sharp and commanding. "We have not seen your kind in our chambers for many cycles. Tell us why you are here." Clara straightened and spoke clearly. "I come on behalf of the Human Alliance. Our goal is to build a relationship of trust and cooperation. We believe that together, humans and Valari can achieve much more than alone." A murmur ran through the council. Clara noticed that the oldest members exchanged glances, while the younger ones leaned forward with curiosity. Lyra, hidden among the shadows of the chamber, studied Clara carefully. The human's words were simple, but there was confidence behind them. Confidence mixed with intelligence was dangerous, and Lyra knew it. The council continued to ask questions, probing Clara's intentions. She answered each one carefully, showing knowledge of Valari history and culture. She spoke of trade, shared resources, and exploration. Every word was chosen to reassure, yet also to subtly show humans' capability. Lyra's suspicion grew, but so did a strange sense of respect. After what seemed like hours, Clara was asked to meet Lyra privately. Lyra had prepared herself mentally for this. She had thought of every scenario, every possible move the human could make. She had even rehearsed the moment she might have to kill her. Yet as she saw Clara approach, she felt a twinge of doubt. There was something about this human that did not fit her expectations. "Commander Lyra Talon," Clara said, bowing slightly. "I hope we can speak freely." Lyra studied her for a moment before nodding. "Speak. But remember, your life is not guaranteed here." Clara met Lyra's gaze. Her eyes were steady, calm. "I understand. I also hope that by the end of this meeting, you will see that I am not your enemy." Lyra felt an unusual tension in her chest. Humans were strange creatures. They seemed fragile, yet they had a strength that was not obvious. Clara was calm, polite, and cautious. Yet there was a quiet power in the way she carried herself. Lyra had faced many threats in her life, but she realized this human might be unlike any she had ever encountered. The two walked through the station's corridors, speaking in quiet tones. Clara asked questions about Valari culture, their strategies, and their concerns. Lyra answered cautiously, aware that any wrong word could be seen as weakness or threat. She found herself explaining things in ways she had never done before. Clara listened carefully, absorbing every detail and asking thoughtful questions. By the time they reached a small observation deck, Lyra had begun to feel uneasy. She had expected fear, confusion, maybe hesitation. Instead, Clara moved with confidence, asking questions that made Lyra think differently about her own people. It was unsettling. "You understand a lot for someone who is new here," Lyra said, her voice low. Clara smiled slightly. "I have had good teachers, and I believe it is wise to learn as much as possible before making decisions." Lyra studied her. She realized that killing Clara would not be simple. This human was clever, careful, and perceptive. Any attempt to strike would be noticed, anticipated, and perhaps countered. Lyra's thoughts raced as she considered the possibility. Could she really follow her orders? Was this human the threat the council feared, or something else entirely? A sudden alarm echoed through the station. Red lights flashed, and the council chamber sent a warning across the station. Lyra instinctively reached for her weapon, her mind racing. Clara noticed the shift instantly, her eyes narrowing, but she did not panic. She simply observed, calculating. "It seems trouble has found us," Clara said calmly. Lyra's eyes widened. Most humans would have panicked or frozen. Clara was analyzing the situation, thinking 2 steps ahead. That was dangerous, not just for her enemies, but for anyone underestimating her. Lyra made a decision. She could follow orders and eliminate the human, but she hesitated. Clara's calm, intelligence, and courage had thrown everything Lyra had planned into doubt. For the first time, Lyra wondered if the human's reputation for strength and cunning was true. Perhaps they were not merely unpredictable, they might be extraordinary. "Stay close," Lyra said, her voice tight. "This situation may become dangerous." Clara nodded. "I can handle danger." As they moved through the corridors toward the source of the alarm, Lyra kept her hand on her weapon, ready for anything. Clara moved beside her, unafraid, studying every detail. The station was filled with shadows, flickering lights, and the hum of machinery. Every step was tense, every corner a potential threat. They reached a control room where the council's engineers were frantically trying to stabilize a failing system. Lyra quickly assessed the situation, giving commands with precision. Clara watched, then spoke up with a suggestion that immediately made sense. Lyra had to admit it worked perfectly. The crisis was averted with no casualties, and for the first time, Lyra truly looked at Clara as more than just a human. She was resourceful, brave, and clever. Perhaps this human was someone worth trusting, or at least worth understanding before making any final decisions. As the alarm cleared, Lyra and Clara stepped onto the observation deck again. The stars outside stretched endlessly, reminding them both how small this conflict seemed in the vastness of space. Lyra finally spoke, her voice quieter than before. "You are unlike anyone I expected," she said. Clara smiled. "Perhaps your expectations are not always correct." For Lyra, that was true. Everything she had been trained to believe about humans was being challenged in ways she could not yet fully understand. And for the first time, she wondered if the orders she had prepared to follow might no longer make sense. Clara turned to leave, but before she did, she looked back at Lyra. "I hope you will choose wisely, Commander. Sometimes strength is not in killing, but in understanding." Lyra watched the human walk away, and for the first time, she felt uncertainty and something new, a flicker of respect. The council expected her to act, to follow orders without question. But now, Lyra realized that the human might change everything, and deep inside, she knew she would have to decide whether to follow orders or follow reason. As Clara stepped onto the shuttle to return to her ship, she did not look back. She had made her point. Human intelligence and calm courage had unsettled her enemy. But it was only the beginning. Lyra would remember this encounter, and it would affect her decisions from that moment onward. In the quiet of the observation deck, Lyra Talon clenched her fists. She had prepared for the human to kill her, yet what this human had done, simply by being clever, calm, and brave, had changed everything. And that was only the first day. Clara returned to her ship, the small human vessel that had brought her to the Valari station. She moved quickly but calmly, keeping her eyes open for anything unusual. Her team was already preparing the ship, checking systems, and reviewing the data they had collected during the council meeting. Clara had learned much from the first encounter, and she knew the Valari would be watching closely. She needed to be ready for anything. Back on the station, Lyra Talon stood alone in her quarters. She could not stop thinking about Clara. The human had done something no Valari had ever done before. She had stayed calm under pressure and made decisions that were smart and fast. Lyra was trained to see humans as unpredictable and dangerous, but this one was different. Something about Clara made her pause. The next morning, Lyra prepared herself for another meeting with Clara. She knew the council would be watching closely. Orders were clear: test the human, find weaknesses, and if necessary, eliminate her. But Lyra was unsure. Could she really follow those orders? Clara entered the station again, this time with 2 other humans from her team. They moved carefully, following the station's rules but also observing everything. Clara's eyes flicked over the Valari soldiers stationed along the walls. She could sense tension, caution, and watchfulness. She was used to this. Humans had always been careful observers, and this skill often gave them an advantage. Lyra met Clara in a quiet hallway. "You are back," she said, her voice even but slightly tense. "Yes," Clara replied. "I wanted to continue our conversation. I have more questions about Valari culture and council procedures." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She knew the council would expect her to challenge Clara, but she also knew the human might teach her something new if she listened. "Very well. Follow me," she said. They walked through the station, and Clara asked simple questions. She wanted to understand how decisions were made, how conflicts were resolved, and how the Valari interacted with other species. Lyra answered carefully. She realized that explaining these things to Clara required honesty, but also caution. She could not give too much away, and yet she could not lie. Clara listened, nodding and taking notes. Her curiosity was genuine, and she asked questions that made Lyra think. Why did the council prioritize certain actions over others? How did Valari measure strength and loyalty? How did they decide who could lead and who could follow? Lyra was surprised by the depth of Clara's interest. Most humans only cared about trade or territory, but this one wanted to understand people. As they walked, Lyra tested Clara subtly. She asked questions designed to provoke fear or hesitation. She hinted at the dangers of the station, the power of the Valari Council, and the consequences of failure. Clara did not flinch. She answered clearly, calmly, and without fear. Every answer was measured, showing that she understood the risks and could think logically under pressure. Lyra felt a flicker of doubt about her orders. She had expected the human to be nervous or to make mistakes. Clara had neither weakness nor hesitation. Lyra realized that killing this human would not be simple, and that the council might be underestimating her as well. They reached the council chambers, where a smaller group of Valari leaders waited. These members were responsible for overseeing security and strategy. Clara introduced herself politely and began asking questions about the Valari fleet and their defensive strategies. Her questions were simple but smart. She was careful not to reveal human capabilities, but she also wanted to understand the Valari system. One of the council members, a young Valari named Kellen, spoke sharply. "Why do humans seek knowledge of our defenses? What is your purpose here?" Clara smiled slightly. "Knowledge allows understanding. Understanding allows cooperation. I am not here to attack or destroy. I am here to learn and to find ways we can work together." Kellen frowned, suspicious. But Clara's calm voice and steady gaze made him pause. Lyra noticed the change. Even the most suspicious Valari were forced to consider Clara's words carefully. She was not threatening, yet she commanded attention. After the meeting, Clara and Lyra returned to a quiet observation deck. The stars outside were bright and endless, stretching across the blackness of space. Clara leaned on the railing, thinking. She had learned much about the Valari Council, their fears and their strengths. She also knew that trust would not come easily. Lyra would be important in building that trust. "You are very careful," Lyra said quietly. "Most humans would rush, make mistakes, or show fear. You do not." Clara turned to her. "Humans have learned to survive in difficult situations. Observation, patience, and calm thinking can be more powerful than weapons." Lyra nodded slowly. "Perhaps, but that is not enough. You must understand that the Council expects loyalty above everything else. They do not forgive mistakes." "I understand," Clara said, "and I will be careful. But I also believe that understanding and trust can be stronger than fear." For the first time, Lyra felt respect for the human. She realized that Clara was not just clever. She was wise beyond her years. And she was brave. Lyra had been trained to fight, to plan, and to eliminate threats. But she had never faced someone who could challenge her not with strength, but with intelligence and calm courage. Over the next several hours, Clara and Lyra continued their discussion. Clara asked about Valari history, their alliances, and their conflicts. Lyra answered, sometimes hesitantly, sometimes fully. Clara listened carefully, sometimes nodding, sometimes asking another question that made Lyra think in a new way. As the day went on, Lyra felt something she had never felt before: uncertainty. She had trained to follow orders, to act without hesitation, to trust only what she knew. But Clara's presence challenged that training. The human's intelligence, calmness, and courage were powerful, and they were not easy to ignore. When the time came for Clara to leave, she turned to Lyra. "Thank you for your time. You have been very helpful." Lyra nodded. "You are unlike anyone I expected. Most humans are loud, aggressive, or careless. You are quiet, careful, and strong in ways that are not obvious." Clara smiled slightly. "Strength is not always in weapons or size. Sometimes it is in patience, observation, and understanding." Lyra watched her leave, and for the first time, she questioned the orders she had been given. The Council expected her to test the human, find weakness, and eliminate the threat if necessary. But now, Lyra wondered if the Council had misunderstood humanity entirely. Perhaps humans were not only unpredictable, they might be extraordinary. As night fell on the station, Lyra could not sleep. She walked the corridors thinking about Clara and the lessons she had learned that day. The human's calm courage, intelligence, and moral strength were unlike anything she had encountered. Lyra realized that this human could change her view of the galaxy and perhaps the Council itself. Meanwhile, Clara returned to her ship and reviewed the day's events. She knew the Valari were cautious and suspicious, but she also knew that small actions could make a difference. Showing respect, asking questions, and demonstrating intelligence could open doors that weapons could not. She prepared notes for the next day, planning how to continue building trust while learning more about Valari culture. The next morning, Clara received a message from Lyra. It was simple. "Meet me at the observation deck." Clara smiled. She knew this meant that Lyra wanted to speak in private again. This could be important. When Clara arrived, Lyra was already there, looking out at the stars. "I have been thinking," she said quietly. "The council expects me to act against you if necessary, but I am not sure what is necessary anymore." Clara listened carefully. "I understand. You are in a difficult position. But sometimes making the right choice is more important than following orders." Lyra turned to her, eyes serious. "Humans are strange. You are clever, brave, and patient, and yet you do not threaten me. Not directly. How can I trust what I do not understand?" Clara smiled softly. "Trust is earned through actions, not words. I hope my actions will show you that I am not your enemy." For the first time, Lyra felt something she had never felt with a human. Respect. Not fear, not caution, but genuine respect. She realized that Clara's presence was changing the way she thought about humans. Perhaps they were more than the council had warned. Perhaps they were remarkable. As the two looked out at the stars, Lyra made a silent promise. She would continue to observe, to test, but she would also keep an open mind. Clara had shown her that humans were not only clever, they were brave, patient, and capable of more than she had imagined. And that was only the beginning. The station was quiet, but the galaxy beyond was vast and full of possibilities. And in that quiet, both Clara and Lyra knew that the next step in their journey would change everything for both humans and Valari alike. Clara returned to the Valari station the next day with a sense of caution. She knew the council was watching her every move, and she also knew that some Valari might not welcome her presence. Still, she walked with confidence, keeping her eyes open and her mind alert. Humans were used to navigating danger, and she trusted her ability to observe and react. Lyra Talon waited for her in a quiet corridor, far from the council chambers. She looked tense, her eyes flicking down the hallway as if expecting someone to appear. "We need to speak," she said quietly. "Something is happening that the council does not want you to know." Clara raised her eyebrows. "What do you mean?" "There is a faction within the council," Lyra explained. "Some members believe humans are too dangerous to trust. They have plans, secret plans, to attack your people." Clara felt her stomach tighten. She had expected caution, suspicion, and maybe resistance, but an attack was serious. She knew she had to act quickly. "Do you know what they plan to do?" she asked. Lyra nodded. "A hidden fleet is being prepared. They intend to strike without warning. If they succeed, it could be disastrous for your people and for the peace we are trying to build." Clara's mind raced. Humans were not unprepared for danger. But this situation required strategy and careful thinking. She needed information, allies, and speed. "Can I trust you?" she asked. Lyra's eyes met hers. "Yes," she said. "I am willing to risk my life to warn you. I cannot follow orders that would lead to unnecessary destruction." Together they moved through the station, careful to avoid guards and cameras. Clara asked questions, and Lyra answered as best she could. She showed Clara maps of the fleet, secret codes, and the stations where the Valari had been preparing their attack. Clara absorbed everything, planning in her mind how to respond. Back on her ship, Clara gathered her team. She explained the situation calmly, showing that humans could act under pressure. "We are facing a threat," she said, "but we are not unprepared. We must move carefully, use our minds, and be ready to act quickly." Her team nodded. Humans had trained for danger, and they trusted Clara's judgment. They prepared their ship, checked systems, and reviewed strategies. Clara assigned tasks, making sure each person understood their role. Every move was calculated, every decision deliberate. Meanwhile, Lyra returned to the station under the guise of normal duty. She continued her work with the council, but in secret, she watched the faction planning the attack. Their conversations were tense, their plans ambitious and reckless. Lyra realized they had underestimated the human. They thought humans would panic, would act without thought. Clara had already proven them wrong. The day of the planned attack arrived. Clara and her team were ready. They had studied the Volari ships, their weaknesses, and the codes needed to move safely through the station. Clara's calm, logical mind allowed her to plan a response that minimized risk while maximizing effect. As the Volari fleet began to move, Lyra secretly sent messages to Clara, guiding her through the station's defenses. She knew this was risky. If the faction discovered her actions, she would face severe punishment, perhaps even death. But she believed in the human, and she trusted Clara's intelligence and courage. Clara led her team through the corridors, using the information Lyra had provided. They moved quickly, silently, and efficiently. Every step was careful, every action deliberate. They bypassed security systems, avoided patrols, and reached critical points where they could interfere with the fleet's attack. When the Volari fleet launched its first strike, Clara and her team were ready. Using simple but effective tactics, they disrupted the command signals, rerouted ships, and created confusion among the attackers. The Volari soldiers were not expecting such precise and coordinated resistance. Lyra watched from her post, her heart pounding. She could see the humans succeeding where she had expected them to fail. They were clever, fast-thinking, and fearless. Clara's calm leadership was guiding them through danger, and it was working. The faction within the council grew frustrated. They shouted orders, tried to regain control, but the humans were always a step ahead. Clara anticipated their moves, used their weaknesses, and turned their strength into vulnerability. Lyra realized that this human was not just clever, she was extraordinary. During the conflict, Clara noticed Volari soldiers who were confused and afraid. She made a choice that surprised even Lyra. She did not attack those who surrendered. Instead, she guided them to safety, showing mercy and restraint. Lyra had never seen a human act this way in the middle of a conflict. It was both shocking and impressive. The attack was finally stopped. The hidden fleet was immobilized, the faction's plans were exposed, and the council was forced to acknowledge the humans' skill and strategy. Clara's calm, careful thinking had prevented a disaster and saved many lives. After the conflict, Lyra approached Clara. "You were incredible," she said quietly. "I thought humans were unpredictable, maybe reckless. But you are clever, patient, and brave. I have never seen anything like it." Clara smiled. "Humans survive by thinking, observing, and adapting. Violence is not always the answer. Sometimes patience and understanding are stronger than weapons." Lyra nodded slowly. She realized that the council had underestimated the human and the humans in general. They had assumed fear and panic, but Clara had shown them something else: intelligence, courage, and moral strength. The council called an emergency meeting. Lyra spoke in Clara's favor, explaining how the human had prevented disaster. Other council members were shocked. Some could not believe that a human had outsmarted Volari leaders. Lyra's support was risky, but necessary. Clara had earned her respect, and now Lyra was willing to stand by her. Clara addressed the council, calmly explaining the situation and offering solutions. Her voice was clear, confident, and persuasive. She spoke not with threats, but with logic and understanding. She proposed alliances, cooperation, and shared responsibility. The council listened, some skeptical, some impressed, and some reluctantly agreeing. By the end of the day, the situation had shifted. The faction that had planned the attack was exposed and punished. the Volari realized that humans were capable of far more than they had imagined. Clara had shown them intelligence, courage, and a willingness to act for the greater good. Lyra walked with Clara to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly outside, shining brightly. "I underestimated humans," Lyra admitted. "I thought you would be reckless, unpredictable, and dangerous. But you are different. You are strong in ways I did not understand." Clara looked out at the stars. "Strength is not always in weapons or size. Sometimes it is in intelligence, patience, and courage. That is how humans survive and thrive." For Lyra, this was a lesson she would never forget. She realized that the Council had judged humans based on fear and bias, not on understanding. Clara had challenged those assumptions not with anger or force, but with calm intelligence and moral courage. The night fell on the station, and Clara returned to her ship. She reviewed the events of the day, thinking about how quickly situations could change when people acted with courage and intelligence. She knew that this was only the beginning. The Volari were powerful, but humans had something unique: adaptability, patience, and moral strength. Lyra stayed on the station, her thoughts troubled but enlightened. Clara had shown her that humans could be allies, that their intelligence and courage could change the galaxy. She also realized that she could no longer blindly follow orders. Some choices required judgment, not obedience, and that judgment had to be guided by understanding, not fear. As the station grew quiet, both Clara and Lyra knew that the events of this day would change their relationship forever. Trust had begun to form, based on action, observation, and respect. And in the vastness of space, the future between humans and Volari was being reshaped. Clara prepared for the next step of her mission. She would continue to build trust, learn more about the Volari, and ensure that humans and Volari could work together. Lyra, for her part, would watch, guide, and support, even if it meant risking her life. Both of them understood that what they had begun could change the galaxy in ways no one had expected. The stars outside the station seemed brighter than usual, as if reflecting the new possibilities. And both Clara and Lyra knew that, together, they could face anything. Clara and her team prepared their ship for a full day of work. They had received detailed information from Lyra about the Volari's hidden plans and fleet positions. Every person on her team moved efficiently, checking systems and reviewing tactics. Clara spoke calmly but firmly. "Today, we act smart, we act fast, and we act together. No mistakes." Her team nodded. Humans were trained to respond under pressure. Clara knew that courage alone was not enough. Strategy, planning, and observation were the keys to survival. The Volari were powerful, but humans had something they did not expect: adaptability and clever thinking. The shuttle lifted from the dock and moved quietly through the station corridors. Lyra had guided them, sending secret signals to avoid patrols and cameras. Clara followed the route carefully, listening and observing, noting every detail of the station's defenses. Every hallway, every door, every guard mattered. One small mistake could ruin the plan. As they reached a key control hub, Clara stopped and signaled her team. "This is it. We need to disable the fleet's control network before they can launch again." The humans moved quickly. Using simple tools and precise actions, they bypassed security systems. Clara's team worked silently, following her lead. Each step was careful but deliberate. They avoided confrontation when possible, using clever diversions to keep Volari soldiers away. Lyra watched from a hidden control station. She felt a strange mix of pride and fear. If the humans failed, the Volari fleet would attack, and countless lives could be lost. Yet Clara moved with calm efficiency, never panicking, never hesitating. Her intelligence and courage shone in every action. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. A small patrol had discovered a breach in the control hub. Clara's eyes narrowed. "Keep moving. Focus. Do not panic." Her team reacted quickly, setting small delays and diversions that confused the patrol. The Volari soldiers became disoriented, unsure where the intruders were. Clara's plan relied on this confusion. She moved ahead, quickly reaching the central control panel. Using a simple device, she hacked into the Volari fleet commands. She did not need weapons. Her intelligence and knowledge allowed her to control the system. Ships that were moments away from launching were frozen in place. Alarms rang, lights flashed, and Volari officers shouted orders, but the humans had already anticipated their moves. Lyra guided Clara through the process, whispering information about access codes and security overrides. "Take the secondary network. It's less guarded but just as critical," Lyra said. Clara nodded. "Got it. Keep the patrols distracted." Her team followed orders perfectly. Each person knew their role, each person acted calmly and efficiently. The humans moved as one unit, using their minds and coordination rather than brute force. As they finished disabling the network, a group of Volari soldiers arrived unexpectedly. Clara noticed them immediately. She did not panic. Instead, she signaled her team to retreat to a side corridor. Using simple tactics, they created a controlled distraction. Smoke grenades, lights, and noises diverted the Volari soldiers long enough for the humans to slip past. Lyra watched in amazement. Humans had a way of thinking that was entirely different from Volari. They were careful, clever, and calm, yet fearless. Clara's intelligence guided every move, and her team trusted her completely. It was unlike anything Lyra had seen before. The humans reached a secondary control room where they found more security systems. Clara quickly assessed the situation. "We only have a few minutes before the fleet can launch again. Let's work fast." Her team split up, following her instructions. Clara accessed the network again, using simple codes and strategies to override commands. Ships that had been ready to attack now powered down, immobilized. Volari officers were baffled. Their advanced technology had been stopped not by force, but by strategy and calm thinking. During the process, Clara noticed Volari soldiers surrendering instead of attacking. She chose not to harm them. "Let them go," she said. "We are not here to kill. We are here to stop unnecessary bloodshed." Lyra realized how remarkable this was. Clara had prevented a disaster without violence. Her moral strength was as impressive as her intelligence. She had earned the respect of even the most skeptical Volari, including Lyra herself. Once the network was fully disabled, Clara signaled her team to regroup. They moved quickly through the corridors, avoiding patrols and returning to their shuttle. Lyra met them at the exit, her expression serious but respectful. "You did it," she said quietly. "You stopped the fleet. You prevented a war." Clara smiled slightly. "We stopped the fleet, yes. But the work is not finished. The Council needs to understand why this happened, and why trust is better than fear." Lyra nodded. She knew this would be difficult. The Council had deep-seated prejudices against humans. Many members believed that humans were reckless, dangerous, or untrustworthy. Clara had shown them otherwise, but changing minds was always harder than stopping machines. Back at the observation deck, Clara addressed the Council. Her words were calm, simple, and clear. A fleet was prepared to attack without warning. The human alliance had no choice but to intervene. "We acted not with anger or revenge, but to prevent unnecessary loss of life. You can see now that humans are not only capable but responsible, and that trust can be stronger than fear." Some council members looked skeptical, others impressed, and a few were quietly ashamed. Lyra stood beside Clara, supporting her with quiet strength. Her presence gave Clara additional credibility. After the council meeting, Clara returned to her ship with her team. She reviewed the events carefully, thinking about how humans had used intelligence, strategy, and moral courage to succeed. It was not weapons or brute strength that had won the day, but careful planning, observation, and the ability to act calmly under pressure. Lyra followed Clara back to the observation deck. "You are unlike any human I expected," she said. "Most of my life, I believed humans were reckless. But you are clever, brave, and disciplined. You can think clearly in ways Valari cannot." Clara looked at her, calm and steady. "Humans survive by thinking, observing, and adapting. Sometimes courage alone is not enough. Intelligence and moral strength are equally important." Lyra nodded slowly. She realized that the council had judged humans unfairly. Clara had proven that humans could act responsibly, even in dangerous situations, and she had earned Lyra's respect in a way no Valari had before. The night fell on the station, but the stars outside seemed brighter than ever. Clara and her team prepared for the next steps of their mission. They knew the Valari were powerful, but they also knew that humans had unique abilities, intelligence, courage, and moral strength that could change the course of events. Lyra stood on the observation deck thinking about the day's events. Clara had not only stopped a fleet, but had also challenged long-held assumptions about humans. She realized that her loyalty to the council did not require blind obedience. Sometimes the right choice was not the easiest or safest. Sometimes it was the choice guided by understanding, intelligence, and courage. Clara reviewed the information Lyra had provided and planned the next steps. She would continue to build trust, strengthen alliances, and ensure that humans and Valari could work together. The events of today had shown her that even in dangerous situations, humans could succeed through intelligence, strategy, and moral courage. As she looked out at the stars, Clara thought about the future. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, dangers, and opportunities, but humans had something special: the ability to adapt, to think clearly, and to act with courage and morality. Lyra had seen it, the Council had seen it, and the universe would soon learn it. For Lyra, the day had changed everything. Her respect for humans had grown, and her understanding of their capabilities had deepened. She realized that trust, intelligence, and moral strength could achieve far more than fear or force, and she knew that Clara Hayes was proof of that truth. The station was quiet now, but the galaxy beyond was full of possibilities. Clara and Lyra had faced danger, outsmarted powerful forces, and prevented disaster, and they knew that the next steps in their journey would shape the future, not only for humans and Valari, but for the galaxy as a whole. The night was calm, but the stars shone brightly, reflecting the new understanding between two species that had once been strangers. And Clara knew that every choice, every action, and every act of courage would continue to shape the universe in ways no one had expected. The day after the fleet incident, Clara and her team returned to the Valari Council chambers. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a shift in the room. The council members had seen the humans' skill, intelligence, and moral strength. They could no longer dismiss humans as reckless or weak. Lyra Talon stood beside Clara, her presence calm but commanding. She had made her choice. She would support the human even if it meant challenging the council's long-held assumptions. The other Valari members noticed the change in her posture and voice. There was authority in her support, and that authority mattered. Clara began to speak. Her voice was steady, her tone respectful. The recent events showed that humans can act carefully, responsibly, and with intelligence. We did not respond with unnecessary violence. We acted to prevent disaster. This is how humans solve problems, with observation, planning, and moral courage. Some council members murmured among themselves, clearly surprised by the humans' words. Clara continued, keeping her speech simple but direct. Trust and cooperation are stronger than fear. By working together, Valari and humans can prevent conflicts, protect lives, and explore opportunities that neither of us could achieve alone. Lyra stepped forward. I have seen this human act. I have watched her plan, lead, and protect both humans and Valari. She has earned my trust. She has shown that humans are not only capable but also honorable. The council was quiet. Many of the members had never expected a human to show such intelligence and restraint. Lyra's words carried weight, and Clara's calm confidence left no room for doubt. Slowly, the mood in the chamber began to shift. A senior council member named Veyer finally spoke. His voice was low but firm. We must consider the evidence. Humans have shown skill and wisdom. Perhaps we have misjudged them. Clara nodded. We are willing to work together, to share knowledge, and to build a future based on trust. We do not want war. We want understanding and cooperation. Lyra noticed that some younger council members were smiling, clearly impressed by the human's words. It was a small victory, but an important one. Clara had not only survived the Valari Council, but had also begun to change their perspective. After the meeting, Clara and Lyra walked to the observation deck. The stars outside were bright and endless, stretching across the darkness of space. Clara felt a sense of calm. They had accomplished much, but there was more work to do. Trust had been built, but it had to be maintained. You have done something remarkable, Lyra said. You have changed how the Council sees humans. Not through force, but through intelligence, courage, and restraint. Clara smiled. Humans survive because we think, observe, and act wisely. Violence alone is never the answer. Intelligence, patience, and moral courage are just as important. Lyra nodded. She thought about the future. Humans and Valari could now work together, not as enemies, but as partners. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but united. They could face any challenge. The next few days were busy. Clara and her team helped the Valari reorganize their fleet, sharing strategies and information. They also began discussions about trade, exploration, and joint missions. The Council slowly began to see the benefits of cooperation. During this time, Lyra and Clara spent more time together. They discussed ideas, plans, and lessons from the past. Lyra learned to appreciate humans' ability to adapt and think creatively. Clara learned more about Valari culture, their values, and their strategies. Each learned from the other, and respect grew between them. One evening, as the two looked out at the stars, Lyra spoke quietly. I have spent my life following orders, believing the Council was always right. But you have shown me something different. Trust, intelligence, and moral courage are stronger than fear or blind obedience. Clara nodded. Every species has strengths. Humans rely on thinking, observation, and patience. Violence alone does not solve problems. Cooperation and understanding do. Lyra realized that her perspective had changed completely. Clara had not only prevented disaster, but had also taught her a lesson about judgment, courage, and morality. Humans were more than the Council had warned. They were capable of remarkable things. The Council formally recognized the humans' actions. Clara was praised for her leadership, and her team received commendations for their skill and bravery. Lyra spoke in their favor, emphasizing that humans had prevented war and saved countless lives. It was a historic moment. Clara's influence began to spread. Valari officers who had doubted humans now respected them. Younger council members looked at humans with curiosity rather than fear. A slow but steady change was taking place. The galaxy's view of humans was being rewritten, not by force, but by intelligence, courage, and moral strength. As days passed, Clara and Lyra continued to work together. They planned joint missions, shared knowledge, and coordinated efforts to maintain peace. Humans and Velari began to trust one another, and the possibility of long-term cooperation became real. One day, as Clara prepared to leave the station for a new mission, Lyra approached her. "You have done more than I ever expected. You have changed my perspective and the Council's. Humans are not only clever, but honorable and courageous." Clara smiled. "Thank you, Lyra. It has been a partnership. We learn from each other. That is how trust and understanding grow." Lyra nodded. "I hope this is just the beginning." Clara stepped onto her ship, looking back at the station one last time. She felt a sense of accomplishment. They had faced danger, betrayal, and suspicion. But through intelligence, strategy, and moral courage, they had succeeded. Humans had proven that they could influence the galaxy not only with power, but with wisdom. As the ship lifted from the dock, Lyra watched from the observation deck. She felt a deep respect for Clara and for humans in general. She realized that the galaxy would be different now, because humans had acted with courage and intelligence. Clara's ship moved into space, leaving the station behind. She looked at the stars and thought about the future. Humans and Velari had a long path ahead, but it was filled with possibilities. Cooperation, trust, and understanding could reshape the galaxy. Back on the station, the Council began to discuss new policies. They recognized that humans were allies, not threats. They began to plan joint missions, share knowledge, and explore the galaxy together. Clara's influence had changed the Council's perspective forever. Lyra returned to her duties with a new sense of purpose. She had seen humans act with intelligence, strategy, and moral courage. She had learned that strength was not only in weapons, but in thinking, planning, and acting wisely. Her respect for Clara and her people had grown, and she knew it would shape her decisions for years to come. Clara continued her mission across the galaxy, always careful, always observing, and always leading with intelligence and courage. Wherever she went, humans showed their unique abilities. They could think quickly, adapt to challenges, and act with moral strength. The galaxy began to notice, and slowly, respect for humans spread. Lyra often thought about Clara. The human had taught her a lesson she would never forget. Humans were capable of extraordinary things, not only through strength, but through intelligence, patience, and moral courage. Lyra knew that one human could change the perception of an entire species. As Clara's ship disappeared among the stars, Lyra smiled. The galaxy was different now. Humans had shown that they could act wisely, courageously, and morally. They had changed the Velari Council and perhaps the future of interstellar relations. The stars shone brightly, endless, and full of possibilities. Clara had prepared, acted, and led with courage and intelligence. Lyra had seen it, and the Council had recognized it. The humans had changed everything, not with violence, but with strategy, patience, and moral strength. And in the vastness of space, a new era began, one in which humans and Velari could work together, not as enemies, but as partners. Trust had replaced fear, intelligence had replaced prejudice, and courage had shown the way forward. Clara looked out at the stars one last time. She knew the galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but humans had a gift that no weapon could match: the ability to think, to adapt, and to act with both courage and morality. The journey had changed everything, and for the first time, both humans and Velari understood that cooperation, understanding, and moral strength could shape the future of the galaxy.